Welcome to the True That Show, a show about lifepreneurship presented with wit, humor, and banter by Deborah Drummond and Caroline Blanchard. A lifepreneur is someone who's living life the way an entrepreneur runs their business. All in. Lifepreneurs are rock stars. Lifepreneurs are people who are brave, who risk, who live full on, who think out of the box, who win this thing called life. Lifepreneurs are around us every day. They are everyday heroes. Join Deborah and Caroline, these two stage-walking women who tell it like it is. You'll learn from the most incredible lifepreneurs who will inspire you to be the best version of you. Now here are your hosts.
Welcome back, everyone. Nice to see you again. Hello, Deborah.
Hello, Caroline.
How are you today?
I'm so excited. We've got some good stuff going on today. It's a good day. It's a good day.
Awesome. Yes. You know what, Deb? I don't know. Well, I do know. You probably asked yourself that a few times because I know we're very similar on that. But you know, when you do stuff with your kids and you're thinking like, am I messing them up for the future? Or I'll say something to them and then they answer and I'm like, it's fine. You'll do therapy anyway. Now I'm giving you the subjects, we can note down like your reasons why right away. But because you and I are not necessarily conventional with our kids, we have the unconventional lifestyles. But also you have been a hippie since like the 70s. So I'm joking. I don't know if it's since the 70s, but I know you've always been a bit more on the hippie style, doing it your way, but you've been unconventional your whole life. So how do you think it does affect your kid? Like, do you think about that sometimes?
You know what? Absolutely. I mean, because first of all, I got two children that are 10 and a half years apart. So I've got my generation, my daughter's generation, and my son's generation. I was called a hippie, but my answer to that is I was born in 1964, the year of the Beatles. So how could I not be? I know that when we laugh and we say to our kids, I used to say to my kids, I'm like, just write a book and you're going to make a whole lot of money off me one day. Right? My mother traumatized me. I think every parent at some point is going, I'm wondering, because we know they don't come with manuals, right? These kids of ours. And, the idea that kids come out and you make their personality, that you make all this impression, but I got two kids and I know that you got three and they come out pretty individual. I'm like, are you sure you two came from the same body? If it wasn't my body, I would have maybe, made that question to them. But I think that throughout my different parenting styles. Now, look, people in the neighborhood used to call me Shirley MacLaine because I'd have my daughter in I had the red wagon. We had the big heritage house. We went for walks at the beach. We did all that. But I refused to use a microwave, right? Instead of putting my child in daycare, I had a nanny come and take her in between my clients, right? And she'd come back and I'd nurse longer than people thought I should be nursing, right? 6 weeks or whatever it was. And so people used to call me Shirley MacLaine. Me and my daughter used to walk in the wagon and deep breathe. Now she's 28 this year. So what? We're talking 23 years ago. And we do deep breathing around the neighborhood and woo and breathe. People like, you crazy, like you're crazy. So because my daughter didn't know, I think, had I converted from being what people thought was normal back then to somehow finding this revelation of life and changing while she was, mid-teen or something, I think that'd have been more difficult. But I raised her in crazy. And it wasn't until she went to school, she realized that raisins weren't candy. And she was so mad at me that I made her wait till she was 16 to get a cell phone, that at 28 years old, she still rides me about it. But yes, so of course I questioned at times, particularly making decisions around medical things, using natural medicine versus, conventional medicine was probably my big, like, am I doing okay here? Is this okay here? Like, am I messing them up for life kind of here? And I think the more I got okay with myself and the word that when the culture caught up to me, I felt better. But at this point, if I've messed them up, we're pretty well at the book signing.
Well,
how about you, Caroline? Because you've got three.
No, I can tell that your kids will have a thicker book than mine to write. And I'll help them. I'll edit their book. So Chloe and Ocean, if you need help, come to Carolyn. Um, no, my kids, I was not unconventional like you in the sense of like nutrition and all of that. Um, for me, it was more like 9 years ago when I started. Well, I've always had entrepreneurship in me. And I've always found a way to make money since I'm little. Like I wanted something, I had to go make money. I remember I was like 7 maybe, and I loved strawberries, and we didn't have enough money to buy it because it wasn't like now that you get them, 2 for $4. It was a luxury item back then. So I convinced my mom to let me go work picking strawberries. I lost my job. I think it was like 2 weeks after because I ate too much, too many. But that was like, for me, it was like, okay, I'm gonna go pick them, put one in the basket, eat one in the basket. So I was getting my share of strawberries. But anyway, long story short, I raised my kids a bit like that. But in the last 9 years, which was when my son entered teenagehood. So that's when they start going to high school, and they don't want to be in school really. And you're like, yeah, you need to be in school. And he was just like, why? I'm just going to start a business like you did. And I was just like, because you need to be in school. It's like, but why? Because. So it becomes a bit harder to like, I have my bachelor, but then my kids are telling me, well, you're not using it. You still started your businesses, and that's where you got your success from. And I've tried to really raise them with, read 20 minutes before bed. That is since they're little. Read, do this, listen to podcasts. Like when you make them listen to Tony Robbins and they look at you and they're like, wow, that guy is whacked. And you're like, no, he has a really, really good message, So often I thought, maybe I'm messing them up. Maybe they're too young. Maybe their brain is not there. And there's one huge thing that I realized, especially since we started our podcast and we're, really listening to people's story. We're doing good because we're really implementing things in their brain that they won't have to start learning at 30 or 40 like I did. It's something more natural. Personal development is not a myth. It's like something that you tell them, no, you need to do that. You need to work on your motivation. You need to work on your gratitudes. Like my kids, since they're little, they write their gratitudes. Well, not the older ones anymore now, because that's not cool right now, but the younger one still does. And I'm so excited because our guest today is only 32 years old. She's amazingly successful. Like, honestly, she could teach a few 60, 70 years old how to, manage their money and how to actually do things. But I was excited to listen to how she was raised she could really, really be messed up because she was raised between a mix of Deb and Miami. So because her parents did both. But I mean, she turned out to be an amazing young entrepreneur. And I'm going to stop talking and let her tell her story, but please welcome Shanda Wright with us today. Hi, Shanda.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Caroline.
My
Deborah,
pleasure.
It's good to see you.
My pleasure. So Shanda, tell us a little bit about you. Like, right now, let's start with present moment. What are you doing in your day-to-day life?
Well, I am a senior coach with She's Creating an Empire. My business partner and I have founded this organization and team and company about a year ago when we were actually building our traditional network marketing business. And we noticed that the conversation around money was different for men and women, and specifically wanted to create a space where women could have the conversation on their own. And the example that I use quite often is no man has ever brought up his daycare schedule when we're discussing business opportunities. To me, never once, but it comes up all the time for women. They're like, wait a second, this is what time I send my kids to school. Do you need me at 7 a.m.? Because if you need me at 7 a.m., this is not a thing that's going to happen, right? And so we're having this conversation, and I'm just noticing that it was almost like women didn't feel qualified to handle their own finances. And coming from a background where I had no one really teach me how to build wealth, how to handle the laws of money, how to manage that stuff, I've been very curious for my whole life about how to get on the right side of money, right? You know, that cash flow quadrant story that, you know, we've all read it, Robert Kiyosaki, right? If you haven't read that book, I highly recommend it. But this concept of moving to the right side of money, and all I wanted was to stop worrying every time something broke. I just didn't like that pressure, and anything that is that upsetting, I'm going to try to get out of my life. And so on this mission of creating that for myself, I really noticed that Melanie and I actually both noticed, I remember, over a glass of wine one night, and it was like, where are all the women? Why aren't we having this conversation with them? And then she's creating an empire, and the response was crazy. Like, we were expecting 10 people and 50 showed up to our first meeting. And it was like, oh, this is a conversation. And then we open the Facebook group and there's 3,500 women flooding in within a few weeks. Like, it's just crazy, kind of the movement and like the hunger and the desire for information. So daily, what I'm doing is I'm working mostly with women who are building online income streams, paying off their debt, and learning how to compound their money so they can be on the right side of money, and literally teaching them how to go from the wrong side of money to the right side of money.
Oh, I'm unmuting myself here. That's amazing. When we talk about, one of the questions that we want to ask as parents, when you hear a story of someone your age, is where did that trail back to? And I know that we had a little bit of pre-conversation before the interview, and I'm talking about my son, and Caroline's talking about, her daughter, and kind of the impression that our parents make on us, and the difference in the cultures now on just the availability to be able to do what you've done. You're in your 30s, Caroline's in her 40s, I'm in my 50s. It's interesting. We're all wearing white and black. If you're listening to us on the podcast, we've all dressed very, but, so tell us a little bit about that. So, I'm sure you just didn't go, hey, maybe, or maybe you did. Everybody has a different story. What was kind of your home environment? What made impression upon you to all of a sudden in your 30s decide you're going to rock it out and teach women about money?
I love this question. Okay. So as a child, I was so blessed. My mother said, we may grow up poor, but you're not growing up broke. And she did this very much on purpose. And I think it comes from her background. And my mother was a personal development coach. That's what she did for a living. She taught the Dale Carnegie course. She sold the Dale Carnegie course. She worked with corporations to train their team on how to win friends and influence people, right? We've all heard of Dale Carnegie. And so I had an amazing mother who was very well equipped to handle all the craziness that was our family. But in grade 1, let's just say I was an energetic child, and it took a lot to keep me distracted. And it took even more to keep me sitting still. And luckily, I was so blessed in kindergarten and grade 1 to have, in my opinion, some of the best teachers. Like, my grade 1 teacher was 62 years old, right? She had been teaching her whole adult life. This woman knew children, and she was very good at giving me extra projects to keep me busy. But at some point, they just said, hey, she's going to do better at home. Like, we could try to, work with her and give her some specialized help. And I think now I would have been diagnosed as ADD or ADHD, and learning from people who have been diagnosed that, but I was so blessed to have a mother that said, that's what's best for my children. I'm going to do that. And so she took me out of school, and she took all of us, and all of us didn't go to school from the time I was in grade 1 to the time that I was in grade 10. When she had to go back to work. And so I was beyond blessed to have a mother who took the responsibility of what I was going to learn on her. And she prioritized things, which I thought was really interesting. She never cared about spelling. She's like, as long as the spell check catches it, I don't care. You're going to have a computer your whole life. I do not need you to know how to do this. I do not need you to know your multiplication tables. I do need you to know how to communicate. I do need you to understand some basic principles, right? And so, because I was because I was brought up poor doesn't mean I was going to be brought up broke. She would never say, we don't have the money, or we can't afford that. She would always say yes, but then put a criteria on it that gave me ownership of the result. And she did this very much on purpose. She describes it to this day as this conscious effort she made. And she specifically would say things like, yes, you can have that with your own money. Yes, you can have a white fluffy puppy when you move out. She also was planting seeds of me moving out very young. She did a very good job of that. She's like, I am not having a 30-year-old living in my house. And so, yeah, she would just say yes with your own money. And when we were at the corner store or at the grocery store and I asked for a chocolate bar, she wouldn't say yes. She would give us $1. And we got to decide, do we get 101-cent candies or do we get a chocolate bar? And it just created this understanding that money is choice and that money is empowering and that money is something that I have control over. And so it got me also associating freedom and choice and money. Like they were very much connected to me. I saw my money, my choice, my freedom, my options. And I ended up using so you start shoveling driveways in the snow. We're Canadians, so we get snow, very little, but we do get some here on the West Coast. And, babysitting, doing all those sorts of things. And what happened is I ended up like buying candy in bulk and then employing my siblings to help me with my projects. And so, it was a very natural progression that I think it came out of. And it was reinforced again throughout my life that money was choice. Money was choice, that money brought options. And so it just created an awareness for me. And then as I started analyzing who was successful and who wasn't, my grandfather had money, we didn't. What's different about us? And then I just started watching and asking, getting really, really curious. I asked a lot of questions. I was a very nosy little kid.
So that's very interesting. And when you think about, when you hear your story, it's like there was something that you had naturally. You obviously, whether people call it AD or ADHD, that spunk and what have you. And then you had, it seemed like a natural sense of curiosity in an environment that promoted that. Caroline, we've interviewed so many people. We have our own stories of just such a mixed bag. So many people come from a mixed bag where there was that one teacher, not just both teachers. There was that one parent, that one aunt, that one that kind of had a bit of a gleam that when things were kind of funky, a lot of people get your kind of epiphanies after some funkiness. And so, yeah, I think the word blessing is really incredible. And it's again, what a conversation from a generational standpoint. I had a woman yesterday ask me about my son. Is Ocean in school? And the guilt, I could feel it from my gut go all the way up till it came out. And I said, no, he's actually studying with a fashion designer. And so I care more about fashion and art for him because he's going to be an entrepreneur than I care about social studies. And for her, she laughed and, oh my gosh, I totally get it. And for me, I was like, ooh, I noticed I was going through all the generations and it was not a comfortable statement, but it was a real statement and part of me believed in it. So very, very interesting that you come from that. I got to ask before I throw it over to Caroline, because I know she's got some great questions for you. Was there ever a time between this blessed environment till now that got tough? Like, did you ever come up against yourself, or did it ever, because it sounds so inclined, sounds so beautiful. And here we are talking today.
Yeah. It's all perspective, right? I believe there's nothing good or bad. It's all a matter of how our mind makes it. And so, luckily I've been able to, in retrospect, because obviously, I don't know if it's obvious, but as children, I kind of feel like we're always kind of trying to figure out what's normal and what's not in our life. And so, I felt hard done by a lot of things, and some of them by other people's standards. My family's divorce was a mess. I didn't talk to my biological father for 15 years. I hadn't seen my biological sisters for 15 years. My mother was at 45, never able to work again, never able to drive or leave her house again. She had to retire on $200,000 and she's in a third world country now because of it. There's been drama. I've been in major car accidents. I've been in $1 million in debt. I've been in abusive relationships. Like I've had the ups and downs, but the thing that's so beautiful is that I truly believe that when you raise a child with the right, like the core values are intact, the honor, the respect, the integrity, understanding what those things mean at an intrinsic level, that we always come back to that. Right? I struggled with addiction for a period of time, depression, like I went through the full gamut, but luckily I was able to come back to the things that I knew were true. There was a part of me that resonated with knowing what love was, knowing what honor was, knowing what respect was through the examples that I had in my past, that I could go back and I could resonate with it. So when I met people like Melanie, when I meet women like you, then I'm able to say, oh, that resonates with that part of me. The part of me, like Tony Robbins always talks about it, the I am the voice. That mantra, the concept is that the voice inside me, the voice of truth, knows right, knows wrong, knows what's good for me. And knowing that I could go back to those things means that I can now look at my whole past with a different perspective instead of the one that I was in it with, which created the reality, right? On some level, we kind of choose suffering in those moments instead of choosing lessons or a different way of looking at it. And now that I've been to third world countries and been able to do missions work and the charity that Melanie's founded and that I, partner with her on, that's very much a big part of She's Creating an Empire. All that stuff puts it all in perspective, right? None of it really matters. It's all made me who I am. And there's been, I spent a lot of time with my counselors. I actually had a girlfriend who said that she was going to therapy. And I was like, oh, how was your counselor visit? She's like, no, it was physical therapy, Shanda. I was like, oh, you can tell, how my day goes. Like, I just assumed, right? And so, but that's the thing, is that personal development, personal journeys, personal growth is such a beautiful experience of reanalyzing your past through a new perspective and taking what you can and then just blessing and releasing the rest. And so I am so grateful that I had mentors who, and continue to have mentors who are able to show me by their example, understanding perspective and being able to thrive because of what they've been through. So I definitely had some challenges. I'm not going to say that even a moment of it was easy. It's still not easy, but it's aligned. And when you can have that.
There's a big saying that if it was easy, it wouldn't be worth it. No? That's like Jeff Wilson in our company always says that, don't wish what you don't, careful what you wish for. And if it was easy, it wouldn't be worth it. And for me, that really stuck in my mind. But I love your story. And I admire your mom, what she did, because first of all, I'm surprised that a teacher would say she would be better home, but she clearly embraced a challenge. And unfortunately, yes, there's a lot of ADD kids, and I've met a lot, and I am one of them. But these kids are brilliant. It's just there's too much going on that they can't and being curious is a part of it. But anyway, what I want to get to is that listening to your story, what really resonates for me is that I'm in a place where I was your age. I was discovering slowly but surely personal development, and it took like 10 years to really even understand that it was personal development and really putting a conscious effort into it. I started therapy, but again, it was so taboo. It was just like all the really, really, really messed up people were doing therapy. So if you would go or if you would have a therapist, you would not say it. It was just like, oh, I have some errands to run. I need to do this. Now it's like, I'm going to my therapist, and it's like you're cooler for that because at least you're owning yourself. And I even know a lot of people that are not going through crisis, and they still have their therapy just to make sure that when that crisis happens, they will have the tools. Because in our everyday life, there's those little things that happen that you don't need to have a crisis to have a therapist. That's my point. But what I like about what you say is that for me, the biggest work was reprogramming a lot of things that I heard when I was younger, and a lot of things that were really stuck in my mind, like, you were born for a small bread. Money doesn't grow on trees. We can't afford that. Oh, look at them across the street. They have it. So it was always like, for me, it was always like, oh, money is not for me. I'm a nice person, but I'll never be rich. It was like I was categorized into, yes, you're smart and you're nice, but that's what you'll say. And rich people are other things. And then you develop this weird relationship with money. There's deservedness. There's like, what is really abundance? And also, like, is it for me at all? So you did not have to redo all that reprogramming, which is, I think that's the generation of 40, 50s. That's what we're going through now, reprogramming our brain. So it's a huge gift that your mother gave you to always do that. And I'm listening to things she was telling you, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what I should have said. And like now it's like, my daughter's birthday is coming. She's going to get an iPhone 12 and she's turning 13 and I don't have an iPhone 12. And I'm like, when did I become that? Like giving it to her. And I'm listening to you and I'm like, oh yeah, that would have made so much more sense. But anyway, I just want to say the one big thing that I'm getting from you, and it depends which generation you're in listening to this podcast, but what we give to our children is really not money that matters. It's really the core values. And I hope, and I think that the generations to come will be raised more with those core values at the base, those ones that we won't have to even wonder, do I deserve it? Like my youngest one, since she's born, I'm like, you are the best in the world and you should love yourself the most. I was raised that if you say something like that, it's pretentious, it's conceited. She is raised that now she'll tell me, well, not these days because she's a tween, but let's say 2 years ago, Mama, I love you the most in the world. Well, right after me, it's you. And I'm like, yes, but anyway, I had to share that. But Shanda, I want to know, like, where and when did I know you had all these jobs and everything, but how old were you when you did your first entrepreneurial, like, I'm going to make my own money because I want something?
Yeah, I was probably 8, I think. I can't remember exactly what the age was, but it was in that kind of age range. It was when I remember waiting to be 10 because I could take the babysitting course and then I could babysit kids that were like, right? And I was homeschooled, so I would do daytime babysitting for a premium. I would do overnight babysitting for a premium. My mom didn't care, right? Why not? That's perfect. So, one of the biggest blessings that came from homeschooling for me, to anyone who's homeschooling their kids right now, just know that I don't remember anything from any class, really. I don't know if you guys can remember grade 7 science, but I for sure don't. But at the end of the day, what it taught me was that there's no building for learning. There's no schedule for learning, just like there's no schedule for work or there's no, right? So it taught me integration. It taught me how to, really understand that there's no start and stop. It's not like you stop creating your family's wealth at 5 p.m. Just like you don't stop learning when you walk out of your school building. Like there's some industries where we are required to do ongoing personal development, right? As a nurse, as a doctor, you are required to take ongoing courses. I don't understand why we wouldn't have that same paradigm, right? As adults, like if you don't use it, the law of use is a thing. You don't use it, you lose it, right? Tenacity unused, curiosity unused, the ability to learn new things unused, optimism, hope unused, you lose it. And I just think that's, what I'm so grateful for in that experience. And I know that there's a lot of people homeschooling right now that are terrified about messing it up. So I just want you guys to know you can't. I was unschooled. My mother never sat me down at a table and said, it's time to do math. Never once. Nope. She just answered all the nosy questions I had as a kid. And what I love about the millennial generation, and the thing that I think that we came out doing that was unique, was asking why. Why do you do that? And I remember being bribed as a young child to stop asking questions because I was we've all hung out with that 3-year-old. That's like, why is this? Why? And they're genuinely curious. And I swear we like beat it out of them. Like, I feel like kids are pretty like, they're bold, they're persistent, like they're tenacious, like they ask the bold questions. Like if we lived more like a 3-year-old, sometimes we, get a lot further in some respects, but, just having that wondering, right? I see generationally, like the difference between how you were raised, Caroline, and how you were raised, Deborah, and how I was raised is that I just saw things change that were different forever, right? Every single job I've had, I went from analog to digital. I worked at McDonald's when we had the push screens and the DOS, the green and the buttons, right? And I was there when we switched to touch screens, right? I sold photocopiers I sold photocopiers to accounting firms, legal firms, and those sorts of things. And I was convincing them to go digital and print to their photocopier. That was my job, right? Then I worked at a radio station where we used to hand write out our orders. And then we moved to computer systems where we could do our own data entry. And so I've been a part of this analog to digital conversion in every job I've had in school systems. Like I remember getting my first computer. So, what happened is we started asking questions. It's like, why do I need to learn how to spell? Why do I need to learn how to do my multiplication tables? Like, why? What am I going to do with this information? And I think there's a few people who asked that why before us, which is why the gates were open for my entire generation to ask those questions and to say, does that work for me? Right? And I love what's happening with the digital currency and the trading industries right now, e-commerce, like online marketing, affiliate marketing, network marketing. Like when you look at these platforms arbitrarily, they give people what they want, but we've never been taught to consider them. But because now we're sitting in this curious space, it's like, wait a second, do I want to work a 9-to-5 job? Do I want to live in the country I was born in? Do I want to have children? Do I want to have a nanny? Do I want to have, what do I want? And so, what I love about what's happening right now is that every generation is being influenced by that why question. And we all know that it all starts with why. So if you can have what you want, why you want it, and why you're doing what you're doing, clearly defined, it changes everything. And so I'm just so grateful for what's happening movement-wise globally right now to this question of it's so good. I think it's so interesting. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for all the mentors that have come and taught me, because it's been like a little bit here. I remember I was 10 years old. My grandfather said, if you don't make money while you sleep, you'll work till you'll die. No context. All I remember is asking him about money because he was the only one that had it. And he's like, Shanda. And I was like, what does that mean? So at 15 years old, I'm like, okay, I need to make money while I sleep. How do you do that? You invest it. How do you get money? And they talked about other people's money. I'm like, okay. So I took my student loan and I put it in an RRSP, which is a 401k in Canada. And then I took the tax refund and I paid off the debt. Now, I didn't realize GICs had fees and that the interest rate that I made was actually lower than the fees that I paid, but I still was curious enough to try. And so, that's only because of people like my grandfather. My dad, the way he brought personal development and the tenacity that he brought into my life, the way that my mother just continued, she's the epitome of a tennis ball, not an egg. This woman is insane. And so, it's definitely been a huge blessing. And what I'm loving even more now is working with women who, yes, I'm coaching in this respect because I've asked a lot of money questions and made a lot of mistakes. And there's a lot of women who just don't understand how to get onto the right side of money, but they always teach me something. I learned something so much, whether they're older or younger, we have this collaborative environment. And you ladies know, because we've been connected for a little bit now, that it's we're just better together. And, when we can take mentors in all shapes and sizes, then we can really, I don't know. I made enough mistakes in my life. I hope that I can just learn through mentorship as much as possible going on. So I know I'm so lucky. I'm so grateful.
I think when I listen to you share, it's very interesting because, again, I've been having conversations with people that they take the best and the worst with them. And I'm like, no, when I hear you, you took this from this person and this from this person and this from this person, you kind of have this little pack sack, right? And I remember taking a really powerful course, and I've heard that as well, right? I heard it from Tony Robbins when I was pregnant with my daughter, and me and my daughter's father didn't have enough money for him to buy himself a chocolate bar more than once a week. Like I said, I was pregnant on rice and peas, right? And so I remember taking all the money that we had. Oh, he was not happy in the morning. This is the man that does not do personal development, okay? All the money we had at 2:00 in the morning, and I bought cassettes, 25 cassettes from Tony Robbins. And I'm like, I found out what's going to change our life. And I took $300. We couldn't buy a chocolate bar, right? I took $300. I don't know where I got it, right? And I remember hearing that, Tony Robbins saying, unless you're an author or a singer and you're not making money while you're sleeping. And that's what inspired me to make my first like to actually create a direct sales company. So I'm with you on that. But interesting is that when I hear you taking bits and pieces from people, sometimes in our backpack, we have the best of what someone's given us and the worst. And I think what I've learned through the multiple counseling and therapists, and I love that people consider mental health like they do their dental health, right? It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to my counselor. I love what Caroline said. Like there was an emotional intelligence therapist that I was using for a long time because there's some issues in the family and I needed to know how to deal with them preventatively. I'm a preventative medicine. I had a health studio for 27 years and I taught people how to be healthy now for later. And that's the kind of stuff that you're doing financially. And that's the kind of stuff that Caroline's doing with personal development, right? Is that the stuff that we take in now. But I think it's very interesting as you move along your life, you keep the good and just keep tossing that old apple or banana peel out of your backpack that doesn't serve you anymore and just keep piling in the fresh fruit. And that itself, I'm going to give you credit for, because as much as it sounds like it's all rosy and easy, it ain't. Like, it's just not, right? It's not. No matter where you come from, you get negative and positive impressions. I mean, no one's growing up in, Candyland, right? And so it's about having the ability, or you're back against the wall, whichever one you choose, because one will come before the other, to be able to throw out the stuff that doesn't serve you. I got to ask before we wrap up our interview, you've been with, you've had a lot of women come to you that want to learn about financial literacy at different stages. Can you give our listeners some, simple tools, maybe a little bit, some juice to take home, some notes to take on, if you're at that place where you're looking at financial literacy, or like myself, where even my mother being a credit manager for a big car company, that was really like, whoa, she told me 20 something years old, go get an RSVP. And I just listened to her because apparently she knew more, but wasn't maybe the best advice, but it was at the time. So is there anything you can give, people that don't feel financial literate? Because I'll tell you, I think the number one block to people getting smart financially as the female gender is not wanting to admit that they don't know.
Oh, I think when we think about the blocks, I think it's actually, what is her name? Michelle Marie. That quote that says, it's not our light, it's not our darkness that most frightens us, it's our light. Our greatest fear is not that we're inadequate, it's that we're powerful beyond all measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that can intimidate us. And when you let your light shine, you give other people permission to do the same, right? We know that one, the one from Coach Carter. Yeah. So, I think about it in that sense. There's actually some women, and I've had to do a lot of work on this myself, that are scared of having a ton of money. I didn't realize until I really spent time in what I'm going to, so the best advice that I have is figure out what the heck you want and go for it, and don't listen to anybody else. Figure out what you want. I don't care what it is. If it's $1 billion, if it's $1 million, whatever it is, decide exactly what you want, write it down, put it in front of you, imagine yourself having it every single day, and then find someone who has what you want and follow them, period. That's the answer to always. That's always my advice for every task, because it really is that simple. But what I believe is that there's almost more women who are scared about who they would become, how people would judge them, what people would say if they had millions of dollars, if they had the car of their dreams. There's actually so much shame associated with being wealthy because, Caroline, like you said, we are judged that either you're a good person or you're financially independent, not both. How many role models do you have that look like us, even though we all look different, but you know what I mean? That is not a ball buster, that did not sleep her way to the top, that did not come from wealth or have a family name that she's riding in your mind and in your judgments, right? There's tons of women. How many women have had a platform like Kylie Jenner and did nothing with the brand? Lots. Kylie did something with her brand. She did something with her family's name. Paris Hilton started it, right? And there's other women who have had just as much prestige, just as much fame, who did nothing with it to build their own empire, to build their own brand, to build their own name. Now you see the word Kylie, it literally is associated with makeup and this, it's a It's not a very unique name. It's not like Madonna. Like, she did a great job branding herself. And so, you know, when I think about really what's possible for us, I think it's the desire to not look stupid. It's also the desire to not run into those challenges. Like, I realized for myself that I was afraid. I have some family members that specifically are angry at people with money, and they think you have to hurt people to get money. They think that's a thing. And so but they also don't have any money. Funny story. And so I know that when I have $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 a month coming in, that I'm going to have those phone calls. I'm going to have those conversations with those family members that say, I'm sorry, I don't agree with your life choices and you're being mean to me. I'm not giving you money. You can't manipulate me. Like, I stand for love and honor. I'm going to need you to stand in that, in your request. Like, you know, now I have to have those conversations. And what does someone think of me when I get out of the car that I want to drive? So there's all these stories that happen. And truthfully, I don't believe that you can undo these paradigms by yourself. I don't think so. I've never seen it done. I cannot find one person who is like, oh, all by myself, without trauma, without heartache, without a mentor, and without a community of people around me. I figured it out. So in my experience, either you get a community, you get a mentor, you get clear about what you want, and you run with them towards it. The community protects you because crabs in a bucket, right? Whenever you set out to do something unique or different, right? You're going to have your drinking buddy try to convince you not to go to the gym on Friday night, just like you're going to have your broke friend try to convince you to spend money that you shouldn't be spending, right? So we need to have the community to insulate us. We need to have the mentor to set the standard and to teach us, the mentor with results. I don't follow anyone without 7-figure results. If you haven't done 7 figures in what you're teaching, I don't want to listen. So find a mentor with 7-figure results, my opinion. Insulate yourself with a community, and then just stay focused on that. You're going to get it. You're going to get it. But that's why we built She's Creating an Empire, because I had to do this with a 45-minute coaching call every week from my mentor, which was great. And I was able to do that. But the amount of flack I took, I got made fun of for paying off debt. I got made fun of for the car I was driving. Got made fun of for my shoes. I got made fun of for letting my hair grow out. I got made fun of for taking off my eyelash extensions. I got made fun of for these things, but I'm debt free. They're not. So, yeah, but you have to have that kind of faith that what you're doing is actually going to work. And the only way to do that is with people who have gone before you and to get on side with them. And so, you know, we do have some events coming up. There is a free Facebook group. You're more than welcome. What I would actually suggest, if you're okay with me just giving my Instagram and so that they can connect, you're more than welcome to follow me at the Shanda Wright on Instagram. So that's THE Shanda SHANDA and then Wright WRIGHT. So you can find me on Instagram, but on Facebook, we have a Facebook group as well. And so I think my link is in my bio on Instagram. Yeah. You're more than welcome to go and grab that there. But that free group, we literally have cryptocurrency training. And if you're not looking at digital currency, you got to keep your eye on it. This next 6 to 8 months is going to be absolutely insane. I don't want you to miss that. You know, when it comes to financial advice, live on less than you make, invest 10%, and, you know, pay off your debt as quickly as possible, because most people are not getting more than 20% a year on their investments. And that's what you're paying on your credit card. So, you know, really, when it comes to financial advice, there's so many little logistics I can share. I know how to feed a family on $40 a week per person. I know how to cut your spending so that you can live on 40% of your income. I know how to do those things, and we'll teach you how in the different courses that we have. But the truth is that, you know, it's really about having a community that's going somewhere and a mentor with proven track record of results for them, as well as the people they're leading. Get in that and believe it's possible. The only way to start believing something's possible for you that you didn't have seen no evidence of is hang around with people who have it, because if she can do it, you can do it. And auto-suggestion, you have to repeat it. Just say it out loud every freaking day. I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm a multimillionaire. I'm the first multimillionaire in my family, and every single person with my last name is good forever because of the decisions and the financial choices I'm making this year. Say that out loud. How does that feel? I had a mentor say that on a call the other day, and he said, everyone with my last name is good forever. And I realized, I know his financial situation enough to know he's worth following. And he does more in a month than most of my family will ever make in a year, or in their entire lifetime. does business with Grant Cardone. Like he does what he does. And I just realized, wait a second, we have that opportunity. With this internet, this digital age, if we learn how to make money online and leverage it so that it's not time for money, we live below our means and we put our capital to work for us, all of us can create financial independence for our family for generations because of what's going on right now with the move to digital currency and the shift that's happening in the economy. And so, it is something you can do. You can do it. There's actively women out there that will happily show you how. And it's about learning a few things. That old adage that first you have to learn and then you can take the L off. Like just start studying wealthy people. Think and grow rich. You were born rich. Yeah, like she's creating an empire, right? There's so many good tools. And I just truly believe that, that's the best advice I can give. I'll teach you the strategies and stuff. There's great stuff inside the Facebook group. And we do have courses. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really do think that find someone who has what you want, follow them to the moon.
For me, the best strategy that you gave here, and the one that it took me a long time to do because I was not raised this way. I was raised not by my mom at all, by the environment that women were all catty with each other. We don't support each other. We're like the crabs. We're the typical crabs. But I've learned in the last 10, 15 years to switch my mind and decide, no, I'm going to find all of the women that are really believing in sisterhood, and doing things as a community is so powerful, especially, I like everyone, but especially women. Women, when we hold each other together and when we push each other up and when we're like, sister, I'll help you go up. Gosh, we're so powerful. We are so powerful. And we're also powerful when we decide to be the crabs. But if you choose to go and find the communities where, women will push you up and fix your crown without telling the whole world, hey, I did that, really help each other be at our best. And for me, it's like, that is the best advice. The rest are all technicalities that you can learn. They're all numbers you can learn. They're good habit to develop. But the main thing is to surround yourself by a community of powerful people and a community that will really want the best for you and push you to go always at your best. So Shanda, it was beautiful to have you. It's such a fresh perspective, very inspiring, very energetic, and thank you for your time. It was priceless, and I will put all your information with our podcast, so if anyone wants to reach you, they will know how. And I will leave the last word to Deb because she likes to have it.
She always says that. I'm always like, I'm listening to her words. I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be interviewing, but you know what? I have to say, in all honesty, I'm gonna hats off to both of you. That was the thing that got myself as well, as a woman who's always shouting out, like, if you're 60, give thanks to the women that are 70. If you're 50, give great to always like the path that was built beforehand. The opportunities that we have now are based on, women marching it beforehand. And I love what Caroline said. You know what it reminded me of, Caroline, when I was listening to Shanda talk in that thing? It's like when we wrote 20 Powerful Women in Network Marketing Tell All, when that book got co-published, and we had that amazing book launch of 2 hours of women, just like women in the same industry, in the same sector that would normally be competitors. These are 6-figure earners and up, and going after the same market. Were so collaborative. It was so collaborative. And so that was so powerful. And, we came off just in awe of putting that together. So I do agree with you. It's been fantastic listening to you. It makes me feel even prouder to be a woman today and love the stuff that we're doing. Even this podcast is the platform that we've created for this kind of get out to the world. So with that, ladies, we'll call it a wrap.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week. And thank you, Shanda.
Thank you so much for having me, you guys. I have to say that obviously you've met Caroline and Deborah, but if you're not following them on every platform, these ladies are dynamic, they're powerful, they're kind, they're honoring, they're energetic, and they're absolutely driven for success. You couldn't be following more dynamic women, and I'm so grateful to be on here today, ladies. Thank you again.
Thank you.